So I used to write like articles for newspapers,
Yeah.
for 2 newspapers. And then when my son was born, it wasn't really working. I wanted to be home with him. So I started like working from home a little bit. And then I started writing books. So I edited a book on parenting. I had like 20 contributors on like attachment parenting, which is like holding your baby, wearing him in the sling, co-sleeping, all that stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much what I did. And I was just like mom, and I was staying at home. I was divorced, but I was like, you know, very much in that role, feeling really good about it. But then I had so much anxiety, and the anxiety was overwhelming me. As I was getting older, I went into menopause at 36, which is sort of unheard of.
Yeah.
I was under so much stress. From that, in that time, everything was shifting, you know, my hormones and stuff. I was in a relationship with someone who wasn't really nice. Like there was no physical abuse, but he was just not nice. He was pushing me away. And so I felt like I couldn't do enough, be enough. And so that started to activate all of this insecurity in me and whatever. I ended up getting like a virus in my ear, like a, you know, like a cold in my ear. Lost hearing overnight.
Wow.
Had vertigo for 6 months. They didn't know what it was. They kept putting me on steroids. And then eventually from the steroids, I got shingles all over the back of my head, like at 42.
Oh my god.
So I'm 49. And like everything just like started to really tank.
Yeah.
Like everything was going downhill. So my anxiety that I always had as a child, I used to have like OCD, like touching the door, touching the light, a lot of fear. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And to the point where I was like taking Xanax. And everything was just not going, it was going out of control. I was drinking a lot. And so I worked part-time for my dad, but really wasn't doing much of anything except trying to figure out my life and lots and lots and lots of therapy. And that was nice. It was really nice to talk to somebody and pay them to like listen and not, you know, feel that I was burdening them. Although I probably still thought that. And so, so it was in and out that I would touch into meditation through yoga, the breath through yoga. Ujjayi breath was like my favorite. But it was really hard too because people would say to me when I was having a panic attack, like, just breathe. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to breathe? I'm up here. Like, I'm like, you want me to come down here? Like that? There's no way. No. So, I don't know. It was like, it was sort of always floating around me, but in a way that I just couldn't connect to.
So then with breathwork then, so how did you get introduced to that?
So I was making candles, right? My dad owns a fragrance company. I was making candles as a business a little bit, like here and there. I was in like 10 stores or something. And I was making them for a yoga studio nearby. And the girl came to pick up the candles, whatever. I could not talk one-on-one without Xanax or a lot of preparation, people with me, like what are my exit strategies. And so when she came to the house, she rang the bell and saw me. I was like, now I have to deal with this. And I'd known her and I felt comfortable with her, but I just wasn't comfortable with me. So I was like, I'm really sorry, trying to apologize for the house. And she was like, it's okay. And I somehow brought up that I had a lot of anxiety. And she's like, I used to not be able to go to Starbucks, like walk in myself. And I do breath work and it changed my life. And I was like,
was she the yoga teacher?
Her sister owns a yoga studio and she had just done Healer Training 1. And
David
Elliott, right. Well, she did it with Aaron, with Aaron Telford. So, and I was like, okay. Like I'm going to therapy twice a week. I have Xanax 3 times a day. I was like,
I'm not gonna help. I'm
not gonna start to like
breathe,
like lean into it, right? Like she's like, yeah, it's, you know, whatever. So I would say months to a year, I don't really know, later, I had switched to a new like primary care doctor, and she's like, you take Xanax 3 times a day? I'm like, yeah, it's like a 0.25. She's like, for 6 years? I was like, yeah, it's fine. I feel good. And she was like, you can't do this anymore.
Wow.
So I was like, now what am I going to do?
Wow. So she just cut you off? Or
well, she said like...
Or we had to find that way
to help. She said, you have
to
do like an SSRI. Like, you can't do this anymore. This is not going to work. this is not healthy. It's not what it's made for. It's not that kind. It's like a benzodope, right? I forget what it is, but it alters your brain chemistry. And I was like, but I've been at 0.25. I don't add on. Like, I'm good. Drink to go to sleep at night, but I didn't tell her that. And she was like, give it another month. I want you to cut back to like once every few days. And I was like, what am I gonna do? So I think in desperation.
Did she give you any kind of input into what you should do to help with?
Well, I was in therapy.
Right. So she kind of thought that.
And she's like, let's look at SSRIs. I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna not do that.
Right. So personally, you were like, I gotta find another way.
Well, yeah, because I didn't want something systemic unless there was no other option. Because I knew once I got on it, I was on it for life, right? Like the people I know who are on SSRIs are on them for life. So, take a deep breath, right? So it activates a lot of energy for me. So I think randomly was on Facebook that night and saw that she had posted something, and just felt like the timing. I was like, I'll just do this. So I booked a session, a one-on-one. I started to read about Erin, and I watched. Erin has like a 15-minute video that's 7 minutes of breathwork. So she shows how you. I started to watch. I'm like, I'm not even gonna watch this because I'm gonna get anxious and I'm gonna cancel. I probably almost canceled 5 times. Before I went, I took a Xanax, waited 2 hours, took another Xanax. I'm like, I'm going in, like with Xanax. Almost left. Like it was so overwhelming for me. Did the breath, and it felt like, this is so cool. Like it was no big deal. I did it. And she was Xanax in me, right? So I was like medicated. And so when I did it, I was like, that was so much fun. And she was like, odd response, but okay. Right? So I just decided I would commit to doing it, and I started doing it. I feel like once or twice a week privately.
Wow, great.
And it probably took 6 sessions before I could go without Xanax.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm not really going deep, so I should back off. So I went like to 1, then I went to like a half. And it got to the point where I stopped remembering that I had Xanax. Like I stopped looking for it.
Right.
Excuse me. Stopped looking for it. Stopped knowing that I needed it. Didn't go back to the doctor. I started going to her circles. So, so that was sort of it. I was finding that I was going into some intense anxiety toward the end, and I was like, I was going into deep places, but when someone holds space for you, they have to, in my opinion, have walked the path that you're walking to be able to hold that space.
Sure.
So if they have a really easy, beautiful life and never experienced the things you experience, maybe it's not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So I started to feel a lot of that coming up.
And with the person you were doing with?
And so I went to one of Erin's circles in the city. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do training with her.
And was it a different?
Yeah. Like I felt like I was.
Tell me about the experience you have while you were doing breathwork, let's say, to start with, versus Erin's.
Yeah. And so to start with, I felt a little unhinged. So I would do the breath and I would go into these deep places. I had these beautiful experiences also. Like I would be on a mountain in Sedona and my son would come over and he would tell me whatever we needed to heal. Like I had to learn to separate from him. Yeah. Well, my grandmother would come in. I would see people that I felt were hurting me or were making my life tough. I would see them and they'd be like sinking into the sand, like weak and fighting, and I realized it was their fear that was trying to get me to be controlled.
Okay.
Right? Like my mom, who I love dearly, is like, where are you going? What are you doing? Where are you going? What are you doing? Where are you going? You know, like always worried about me. You're going to the city by yourself? I'm going to be 50, right?
Yeah.
And so that felt like I had to release her energy. And I would release her energy a lot. Like, and it
during the session.
Yeah. So she would say, tell your mom I'm releasing your energy, right? And then I would see my mom getting really small and like crying, wanting to help me and not being able to. And I realized she wasn't nagging; she was afraid.
Yes.
And she could have her fear, but I didn't have to receive the fear.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great way to be able to see it like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, for me, I was like, oh, I get it. But the bigger, stickier things, like I had experienced abuse. I had experienced, sexual abuse and violations to my body, and from different people through the course of my life. And I would see the abuser, and I was able to heal that. But there were some times where I was like, I'm really scared, help me. Yeah. And I didn't feel grounded. I felt like I was leaving my body. I'd want to open my eyes. At one point during integration, I don't know what happened. I kind of came to and screamed help. Wow. And I felt like, and so I went to Erin's circle. I don't know if she was still here or she had moved, whatever, but she was in the city at the time. And I went, and I was nervous, and I didn't know anybody, and it felt like I was being held. I felt like the whole room was being held. And I actually ended up holding hands with the girl next to me. Her name was Amy. I didn't know her. Not on purpose. We were both like, and it felt like, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel. So I'm allowed to go into the fear and the sadness, the anger. I'm allowed to go into all of that. And I don't have to feel, like I could feel the fear without actually being afraid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could go back to that space of, oh my God, this happened, but seeing it in a different way and being able to release it. And
that's the beauty, actually, I find. I think you touched on something there when you're trying to explain something. It's these emotions come up, but it's not in the same way. It's like sadness come up, tears can appear, but it doesn't have to be like I'm really sad. It's just like, oh, there's sadness, there's fear, there's anger. Yeah. And you can just see it like that, and that's how you can release them, because I feel like until you see them in that way, you're so attached to it. So. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I was saying to somebody, I'm not a victim. I was never a victim. So anything that occurred throughout the course of my life, I believe that I incarnated to experience, so that I could be here to help people who experienced it, who maybe need that person to say, what happened was not your fault. You didn't ask for it, no matter what anybody said. I always say, like, in terms of, like, say, date rape, right? So someone goes to an apartment, they're going to have sex with somebody, they decide at the last minute, nope, I'm not doing this. And they're not dressed, and they committed, willingly went in, spent a half hour, and they say no, and they're like, oh yes. They're still not, it's not their fault for going, right? So, but I also think when we take responsibility for releasing the energy and healing, that's when we de-victimize. We take away the power of the negative experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I felt different with Erin. And then I followed her to Wanderlust in Vermont. And I was like, I think I want to do this training. The girl who I was working with said, don't do the training, you're not ready,
The person you were doing the one-on-ones with?
Yeah, and I realized it was like I think it was her fear.
Sure.
So Erin's like, do it. If it doesn't, if you don't want to hold space, you don't have to hold space, just see.
And do the course, because that's what's really nice about level 1. It's a lot about our own work.
Well, I'll tell you, even like the levels that I've been to, it's always your own work, right? Yes. Because when you become stronger, more aware, and more understanding of the process of the human condition, of what it feels like to release, of what it feels like to be held, then it's like you hold space better, right? So, your experience creates that, right? Yeah. So I did level 1, and I was so nervous. And but I went, which was huge, right? I couldn't even walk out of the house. Like,
how long was this from, let's say, when you first went to your first breath work?
Pretty quick. So I think my first breath work, it came up in my feed recently. So like March.
Last year.
Yeah, maybe before, maybe February. And then I went to training in August. But I was thinking about training by June when I went to Wanderlust. And I was just like, I don't know, like, what is this that I want to, why do I want to do this?
But it just felt like there was a calling there or something. I need to explore this further.
Well, yeah. And here's the other thing. I had done Erin's Sacred Terrain Do you know Sacred
I
Terrain?
haven't done it, but I've seen.
So it was her first one, and there were like 300 people in the group, and it was
wow.
6 weeks.
It was like an online.
Oh my
course.
God! Yeah, so she did an hour of talking about, say, whatever theme, like worthiness. That wasn't worthiness, but whatever the themes were.
Yeah.
And everyone would lay down and breathe. We were all muted, so she could watch, but we were all muted, and that's when I really started getting deep into the practice, and I was like, this is like my whole life was changing.
Wow.
You know, and yeah, so I did it in August. Started seeing clients right away.
Right.
When I did my group was November 8th, 17th, 9th, something like that. My first circle was the 17th.
Wow.
And it was, I think, 15 people. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I had no idea. And I just like channeled and I called in Aaron's energy, called in David's energy. When I saw my life shift so incredibly.
So you weren't reaching for Xanax anymore.
Oh, I don't even know where to.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
at that time, you know,
Right.
I mean, well, months later.
Yeah.
What else was happening? Like, did you notice anything else? Like, you said your life changed a lot. Was there anything else that you can kind of point to?
Yeah. So there's a lot. So you know, I mean, the first thing is as you release the energy of whoever's holding your energy, it doesn't mean you're releasing them, right? Like I adore my mom.
Yes.
She used to have mediums do readings, and they would read me because we were so enmeshed, and I'd be in a different state, right? She lives locally, but so I was living, you know, at 49, I think I was 48 at the time, but living in this space of my parents had so much control over every aspect of my life. You know, I mean, I would think, like, I would go away to travel and I'd cry that I was leaving my family.
Right.
Like, so not normal, you know? And so I felt like really responsible for their happiness, really responsible for doing things that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
You know, so the first thing as I released their energy, I would notice that they would feel it. They'd be like calling me or whatever, and I was able to have a relationship with them that was connected but not enmeshed. So when they would start to go into the trigger points for me, like fear, anxiety, not trusting, you know, or sharing with them stuff that I knew would be uncomfortable for them,
Yeah.
I would just be able to disconnect and not get, because I would be so activated. I'd get a phone, I'd be like, oh my God, blah, and then do everything that I didn't want to do. So that was the first thing. Like, I felt really not activated. And, you know, in terms of abuse, I never shared with my family the abuse that I endured as a child, and still don't know. So I can say it like this, and I feel comfortable without getting into the details. So I re-experienced that in a breathwork with actually my friend Clara, who's awesome. She's done the training. She'd be great to connect with. And Clara was holding space for me for the first time in Healer Training 1, and she actually like was able to get me to heal it because she was so comfortable with it.
Right.
And then literally all this stuff. So when you ask like what changed, I wouldn't be able to be in a room with a man alone, like somewhere here working with him, forget it.
Yeah.
I would always be either using my potential sexuality, right? Like, what is sexuality? Sexuality is whatever that tapping into the seduction place, which wouldn't look like seduction. It would look like, you know, like to just get what I wanted, which didn't mean doing anything. It just meant like trying to like hold them with something, like this weird energy of the woman, you're the man, because that's what I learned. Sex was a commodity.
Sure.
So I didn't do that anymore. I was able,
and all this is happening like subconsciously.
Months.
It's not like, but it's not like
Oh,
you're
no,
not
it was never
realizing. It's kind of like you look back and go, "Oh, I'm not doing that," or are you?
Well,
aware
it's
of
weird
it?
that I did sort of interestingly, because I always had like I would always, because you attract what you attract, right? Whatever your energy holds, what you attract.
Oh, okay. So you're not attracting it anymore?
I'm not attracting it anymore. And so I was like, maybe it's that I'm turning 50. But I mean, it's 6 months ago, right? So it's not that big of a difference. So, or a year ago, whatever. So I would notice that men would start to go into like this language that was inappropriate, which might look like something like, yeah, last night my wife wouldn't have sex with me and blah, blah, blah. Like, who talks to a woman they don't know, like, right? Like someone who's working in my house.
Yeah.
And so initially it would still occur, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Like, instead of like, oh.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't happen anymore. Ironically, though, about a month ago, some guy who's in his 70s, and he was talking about his age, and he said something like, you know why I look great? The key to my looking great is that I always have sex or something. And I was like, and I looked at him in the nail salon, like, what?
Yeah.
And I just kept looking at him like, what? And he said, does your husband look young? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you?
Yeah.
So the fear was always like, I can't say no. I can't have the boundary. I can't.
Because a lot of that can be as well when I have that reaction, it's more like I don't want to provoke anything here, so I'm just going to laugh, so it'll be over, so I can go away.
Right, but I would ask you, and I'm not asking you now because this is not it's not your session, right? But what I ask myself is, why am I afraid of provoking him?
Exactly.
Why am I afraid that he has more power over me, that he can put me in a scary place, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what it was. Like
or just owning it then, and just being like, I don't feel like I need to be fearful of this jerk.
I don't have to be fearful of this jerk. And I'm in a room with like 15 people at the nail salon. But so when I was like, I want to say 15, 16, I was at my parents went to a party, and it was like a family party of like business people. Mm-hmm. And this one guy, my parents know this story, was drunk, and he had like this big belly. He was super gross, and he would like walk by me and like push his, into my body.
Lovely.
And he would like rub up against me as he passed me. And I actually told my parents, and they said that, I don't really remember what happened, but they said they dealt with it and told him that like it was inappropriate or whatever. Mm. And this was like the 80s, when I think it wasn't as much of a conversation as it is now.
Sure.
That moment, right, of him just pushing into me as he walked past, that hand across my back, right? That creepy
16. Oh.
Right? So those are the kind of things that took my power away from me and made me feel like, why can't I say, like, you're disgusting, don't touch me like that? Why I couldn't yell it? Because if I yelled it, then it'd be like, there she is making trouble again. There she is creating problems. There she is being dramatic over nothing. He didn't mean it. Or I didn't mean to do this, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's where I think, those things sort of just left.
Yeah.
That energy, it doesn't happen to me anymore. It doesn't, and if it did, I would never tolerate it. You know what I mean? So, and so with all this, I find that a lot of people who come to me dealing with this issue. Because
I feel like we attract the people that have gone through the same, or going through the same things we would have done, so we can help them.
Yeah.
Better suited to help them.
Yeah, and so that's why I think another interesting thing about breathwork is whoever my client is my client. And if they go to somebody else, it's because they need something else.
Yes.
And so, Erin had said to me, because we talked a lot about my personal experiences, and she doesn't do it now, guiding light sessions. I mean, you just talk about what's going on. Oh. Yeah, so good. Oh. And she was like, this is the thing that you're going to be able to work through with people, because you've done it, you feel that you can hold space for it. So that was an everyday dealing with people occurrence. Like, how do I work with people? How do I talk to people? How do I show up for myself?
But even going from that place where you couldn't even have a conversation with someone who came to pick up something, to really being able to look at someone who says something like that and just say,
oh my God, what are you doing?
But that's huge.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. Right? And so these are the things I was like, so I did notice them pretty quickly, because they were so, like, they were the things that put me into the freeze state. Yeah. So there's a book called Waking the Tiger. It's all about trauma. And they talk about, like, when an animal, right before an animal is getting attacked in, like, safari area. Well, I sound really smart talking about that, right? But, like, they're in the wild, right? They'll freeze right before they get attacked, so they don't feel the pain. They go into, like, shock.
Right.
And if the animal gets away, like something scares the animal that's about to attack them away, they'll get up and run, and it gets the adrenaline out. We do this, right? Someone comes up on the subway, and it feels really scary, and then they leave, and we go like, oh my God. Yes. or maybe we text someone, or we like get off the next
And we
stop.
get that kind of,
but we don't like go like rage about it and yell and get
And
it out
run.
and run
And get the
right? Get it
adrenaline
out.
out.
So
Yeah.
it stays in our body, and then it just starts. Every time it happens, it builds and makes that story, that energy that you're the victim, you're not good enough. It makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. So, you know, clearing that was like amazing for me. And then, so I was drinking a lot. I actually wrote an article for Elephant Journal, and when it started to like really become popular, they changed the title to the practice that first they said cured, and I said, please like change that at least to healed. Healed me of my addiction to Xanax and booze. And I was like, addicted to Xanax. I was laying on the street, you know, going into the...
Yeah, it's quite sensationalized.
But it was also the truth, right? I was addicted to Xanax. I needed to drink like a vodka with seltzer to go to bed every night. And people normalize that, you know. I need a drink, just wind down. And so that stopped. Then I started to like not want to drink, you know. And so it was a lot that happened in, you know, what, just over a year. So
do you think there's a certain amount of breath work for you that was a tipping point? Like, you know, some people do it once a month, some people do it every day. What's your practice, or how often do you do, or how often did you think, you know, for you to feel that change?
It's
I never know.
totally, well, there's no answer. It's led by you. So, you know, for me, I was living in such a panicked, anxious state. My body was like, oh, on top of that, by the way, my blood pressure was like 140 over like 90. I was having a lot of inflammation. I was just, my body was out of control. So I knew I needed to really expedite the work. Now, it depends. Sometimes a few times a week, you know.
And you do by yourself as opposed to...
Oh, yeah.
always
Well, I
being
go to the city a lot. So
Okay.
there's Chris and Steven, who's Capricorn rising, who I love. Oh.
I need some more
They're-
insights
yeah,
on people
I'll
in the
tell
city.
you.
Okay.
And they are two awesome men. They were Aaron's assistants at Healer Training 1. And they have 2 circles a month, and I'll usually go once a month to them.
Awesome.
My friend Melissa, I've gone to her circles. I'm going to my friend Lauren's circles. So I'll go to the city for space to be held for me, because there's no one here in New Jersey that I feel confident with, that they could hold the space that I need, because I get pretty intense all the time. I think that when you want to heal and there's a lot, you can do it really frequently. And I definitely would say having someone hold space for you until you really know that you can go. I could go to the wall. You know, I've been like in here myself screaming for my friend Kyle, who I only really talked to one day at Healer Training 3. He was next to me. He wasn't even holding space for me, but we were next to each other healing, and I reached like, you know, and as I reached up, I felt his hand, and I thought he was grabbing for mine, so I held his hand, but he wasn't.
He was just having his own thing.
And after, I was like, you know, you really held space for me. And actually, we're working together next month. But we don't even really know each other. It's like this thing, you know, how training works, right?
Yeah, you just feel that connection. You know, you can do it together.
Yeah, and to have a man hold space for me in a safe way, right?
How amazing is that?
So between him and David, at that training, when I came back, when I would process things, I would call to him, call to David, call for Aaron, call my spirit guides, and no one was there. If they had been there, I don't think I would have been able to go as deep, right? So, but you know, I love circles because it's a different energy. So it depends. Sometimes I'll do it like 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll do 10 minutes as opposed to 30. Sometimes if I'm like feeling a little cranked up, I'll just do 10 rounds of breath.
Yeah.
And just like, oh yeah, I have my body. I can connect spiritually. But I feel like I'm always grounded. I'm always connected. So if I start to feel that I'm pulling away from that, I'll go back to that space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but there's no, when someone comes and they're like, when do I come back? I'm like, whenever you feel
When you
called.
want to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice if everybody came once a week, but you know, they know.
Yeah.
You know?
Is there any advice you would have? Because it's one of the things that I wanted to do this video series for is so people who haven't done breathwork before can listen to people's stories and figure out if they're right for them.
Yeah.
But is there any advice you would have for people who are interested in doing it, maybe a little worried about doing it? Is there anything you can tell them?
It's interesting because, so I say, if you make it to breathwork, you're meant to be there, right? So if they get there, they're meant to be there. So if their friend drags them to a circle, or they mistakenly walk in like, I guess I'll do this, they're meant to be there, right? Yeah. So that's, trust that if you're there, you're meant to be there. This is an awesome thing that I heard at a circle. So I always tell people, you're just breathing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, what could happen?
Just stop doing the deep breathing. If you feel like you're freaking out, you can't stop.
Right, it's just breathing. And so like David has said, it's safe for everybody, right? So some people are there contraindications? Some people will say, I don't want you to do it if this. Yeah. David said, his wife was breathing through her whole pregnancy, right? And they have a beautiful baby. So I would say you're just breathing. You've got nothing to lose. There's no side effects except for, doing really well, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, right? Yeah. So like I've worked with people, so in a circle, maybe I don't check on people unless they're not doing the breath. If they're crying, screaming, kicking, I'm like, that's great. You're great. You're good. Right? So if they're like, I'll looking say around, I'll come to their ear and I'll say, how you doing? It's all through the mouth, right? Because they're not breathing, right? Belly, heart, exhale. And if they're like, I'm okay, then I'm like, okay.
They're okay, yeah.
Right? Because, and what I always say at the beginning of my circles is self-care is not doing the breath if you don't want to do the breath, right? You can decide today's the day to go all the way and go into it. Today's the day to back off.
Yeah.
Just showing up is your first step. And the eject button, which is what I heard at a breathwork circle. The eject button is just so you could open your eyes if you're scared. Just, we always say don't lift your head because you could be lightheaded. There's like nothing to lose. So just try.
Yeah.
And every experience is different. So if you had a great experience the first time, maybe the next time it's not going to be so great, but the time after that it is. So if your first experience is a little hairy, whatever. And, this is the other thing that's huge. So this breath bypasses the thinking mind, right? So after a few minutes, you start to feel the tingles, right? You start to feel like this activation, and maybe this fear comes up, but you're going into you're not going into the place of calm, you're going into the place of we're going to activate, energize, and move through. So when you get there, it might feel like, what's happening? You know what? I'm just breathing, I'm going to go for it, right? So if you do that and you release everything, then you come out feeling like super light and super free and, whatever. Like it is what it is. And so why do you try anything? If you're trying because you want to do something safe, physically it's super safe. Oh, so this is the thing. I forgot where I was going. You bypass the thinking mind, so your subconscious could give you messages, right?
Yes.
And I call energy in, so I'll call in like my grandmother who's passed, but also call my son who's like down the street, right? And you're just calling in the energy, which science has proven. You know this as a scientist. Science proves that there's energy. We have an energy field around us. Call the energy in. Your subconscious will never re-traumatize you. Your subconscious will never hurt you. So, that's where it's back to trust yourself. But if you don't trust yourself, just trust that the subconscious is always working for your highest good, always working for your healing, always working for your vibrating at a higher level. So, if you go into it the first time and there's something like deep in the closet, like way below that you don't even know about or that you don't want to do, you're not going to do it. Your subconscious, like sometimes people will say, like, I've been doing this for months and I really want to heal this time that my mom left me on the stoop and forgot about me, and I was like had to go to the police station and whatever, right? Something stupid, or not stupid, but like not something like crazy, but where they really felt abandoned, right? They really felt like my mom's gone. Is she dead? So this fear is so deep in them. If they're not ready for it, their subconscious won't go there.
And they're like protecting you.
Yeah, and they're like, why aren't I going there? I'm like, you will. So when you're going through this place, your subconscious is giving you these messages, right? It's all from everything you've already experienced.
Yeah.
And it's all from a place of let's heal this, let's let it go. So someone said to me, like, do you keep having to heal something over and over again? It's super intense, right? Like something like that thing, feeling abandoned, is my mom dead? No, mom's car broke down. There were no cell phones, right? Whatever. So when you heal it, I truly have, in my experience, I can't speak for others, but in my experience and the people I've worked with, you don't go back to it.
Yeah.
Like someone said, like, do you have to do it over and over again, or do it practice all the time to keep that from coming back?
Yeah.
No, you release the energy. So you let it come up. You see the energy. You see, like, what is this energy? It's here protecting me because I don't want to be afraid my mom's going to die or abandon me or whatever. Okay, I'm releasing the energy. I don't need this message anymore. Everything's fine. It's done.
Where can people find you? Where can they do groups with you? Where can they do one-on-ones with you? Anything else you do?
yeah, absolutely. So, so this is really the thing that I love the most. And so my website is my name, which is Tiffany Curren. Tiffany, like Tiffany and Company, and Curren with an E. So
I'll add it all below here.
I do one-on-ones here in Boonton. This is my office. Boonton is in Morris County, New Jersey.
Which I found out today.
Yeah, and it's actually like 35 minutes from the city.
It's really easy.
It's super easy to get to. The train comes right in. I do virtuals. I'm not as into virtuals. I'm more into groups and doing big groups or doing one-on-one in person. I do virtual. I've had people say who've been here who say moved or we're traveling. I need a session. I do Zoom calls. And I'm thinking about maybe doing every once in a while like a virtual group around a full moon or something. I'm doing my astrology training, so I want to be able to tie that in. Yeah. But you know, I would love to do this work with whoever wants to come. And you know, for people who aren't in my area, I have a lot of friends who are healers in different areas of the country that I refer out.
Great.
You know, like I said, in the city, I love Capricorn Rising. They're incredible. Samantha Story, I don't know if you know who she is.
Heard her
She's
name.
amazing. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I think that, they could reach me. I also feel like
best to go through your website to contact you?
My website. Oh, and then on social media. So Facebook and Instagram, it's Tiffany Curren Breathwork.
Cool. I'll add that too.
So it's super easy to find me, and I believe like whoever needs me will find me, and we'll find a way to work together. So wherever they are, you know, we can do virtual or whatever. I'm just so happy to be able to do this work.